All right. Welcome, everyone. I am very excited to be hosting my dear friend, faculty member, Ms. Sofia Pistrila, this evening on a subject matter that I couldn't answer one question about. My name is Julia Rickard, Rickard Brisky, and I am functioning as the continuing education developer at IHN. You might know me as a career consultant, co-op, and I'm faculty for professional practice. Sofia and I have known each other for probably 16 years or so. So it's very exciting to be with her, as it is all the time. And tonight, as you know, we're going to be chatting about methylation cycle and folate pathway. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Maybe 2 sentences, and then I'm going to pass it to Sofia after I give you a little intro to Sofia. So she's going to be chatting again, methylation cycle, folate pathway. Methylation has a critical role in gene expression, energy, metabolism, detoxification, immunity, and behavioral development. And of course, it has many other functions that Sofia is going to break down for all the practitioners on the call this evening. And of course, in the recording, this will go out far and wide. So people are very excited about Sofia's workshop that's coming up in May on the same subject. Sofia, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about that afterwards. I'm going to introduce you, and then I'm going to pass it to you. Okay. So Sofia's work as a passionate advocate and supporter for holistic health started more than 17 years ago with her own healing journey that brought her to IHN. After completing a master's degree in science and engineering and 18 years of working in the automotive industry, she experienced debilitating health problems. These multiple health issues resulted from working in a high-stress environment, which ignited her interest in holistic healing. Her willingness to look beyond the conventional brought her to IHN, where a determination to get healthy again became a passion to heal others. And if you have had Sofia in symptomatology too, it is an understatement to say that she is generous with information and beyond passionate, which we all hope to be. So Sofia graduated in 2007 with first class honors, and she has had subsequent training in, Sofia, you can let us know where you've had other training, because I know you've had many different experts in your field support you with all of the knowledge that you have when it comes to the workshops that you'll be holding for us. And of course, Sofia has 15 years of clinical experience and 13 years teaching. Sofia, I'm going to pass it over to you now to let us know a little bit more about yourself and the subject. And please, again, Q&A at the end. So we'll ask Sofia. And then, of course, at the end, we have a giveaway for Sofia. So welcome, Sofia.
Thank you so much for your kind words, first of all. Yes, we know each other. We knew each other for a long time. I'm not going to bore you with all my curriculum vitae, all the 3 pages of courses and so on. I took many courses for the last 16 years. I took courses in functional medicine before it was even called functional medicine, before we even used that word. And my passion is teaching, and everybody, I hope that every one of you who were my students, because I recognize some of you on the list there, you know my passion for teaching. And the passion for teaching cannot be without passion for studying and learning more. Because if you don't learn more, you don't really, and you don't practice, right? I'm practicing as well. So I'm not learning only theory. Whenever I put together a course, whenever I put together a workshop, it's not only theory, but also is, already a lot of stories. And the stories actually about clients, obviously not by name, but the stories explain. And many times students tell me that, I did not, the theory was okay, but I knew the story that you told me. So later on, a few years later, when I had a story like yours, I understood, oh, wow, this is where I applied that, So you know very well already that, today are going to be less stories. It's going to be more theory. And I'm really, really excited to start teaching about methylation. Actually, to be honest, when I started writing the workshop, I kind of had a little bit of a negative feeling. It's like, am I taking too much? Am I trying to do too much here? In my view, it's my personal view, from everything that I learned from all these 16 or 7 years and 15 years and a half of practice, methylation probably is the hardest thing to understand, and it is. And I talked to some other practitioners who do not even want to get into methylation because they say, you know what? I heard it before, or whatever. I went to this course and the other course. I did not understand anything. So what I'm going to try to do today is going to be way simplified, but in my workshops, what I usually do, I'm trying to get from that complicated thing to understand into not only into something that can be digestible without your digestive enzymes there to take, but also how do you apply it in practice? Because to me, I've been to some courses in past few years that were so theoretical that I did not understand how to apply them in practice. So the workshop is going to come in May. It's going to be 2 Saturdays in May. It's going to be theory, and then how do I apply them in practice? Theory, and how do I apply them in practice, right? So even today, I'm going to give you a few nuggets, whatever I can fit in 1 hour. So I'm just going to start now because it's a lot of talk. By the way, it's going to be more than 1 hour. I chopped from as much as I could. I couldn't chop more than an hour, probably in 15 minutes it's going to take. So I'm just going to share the screen and start. And I hope everybody thumbs up. Okay, I hope you see that. If you don't see it, let me know. So today we're going to talk a little bit about methylation cycle, and we focus on the folate pathway, which is actually the first part of the methylation. That's how it starts. With the folate pathway, it starts the whole thing. And when I was going back and forth thinking, what part of the methylation cycle should I choose? And I realized that if I don't choose the beginning of it, you're not going to understand much of it if I just choose something from the end or in the middle of it. So this is why we're talking about folate cycle too. So we're going to talk about what is methylation, functions of methylation, so to understand how important that is, health conditions linked to methylation, to faulty methylation. And by the way, we all have that. And you're going to understand why I'm saying that. I call it a bird's eye view on methylation cycle and pathway because it's going to be like a few minutes only to very, 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 very high, view of what's happening that methylation. How is methylation disturbed? So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that, and more of the examples are going to be from the first part, the folate pathway. And then importance of folate pathway, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Key genes that regulate that pathways. Yeah, because there are some genes that some of them can go wrong by birth. Interactions, biotics, there are lots of them there. Importance of diet, lifestyle, and nutrients, obviously stuff that we can do with any of our clients or with us, and different forms of folate, and dangers of supplementing the wrong form, and even the wrong dosage there. And especially in pregnancy. I'm going to finish with that because it's so important. And at the beginning, I thought, like, you know what, I don't have time to talk about it, but I thought, like, you know what, from the whole presentation today, from 1 hour, if you get that example, and if you apply it in practice, if you apply it in your own life, especially if you want to become pregnant, or if you are pregnant, that would be like fantastic. Okay. So a little bit of statistics here, which are not great for Canada. Only 1 or 2, just to understand where methylation comes into place in our health. In 2019, Canada is expected to spend, and this spend actually a little bit more than that, I understand, $264 billion on healthcare, a lot of money. That means $7,068 per Canadian citizen. That's 4.2 gross increase over previous year in 2018. And part of the GDP of the whole GDP in Canada is 11.6%. It's huge. The direct cost of chronic diseases accounts for about 58% of the annual health spending in our country. Coming to Ontario, some of them are, majority of you are Ontarios, I recognize your name there. 38.7% of every tax dollar that we give to Ontario government goes towards healthcare system. In 2017, 2018 years was 53.3 billion. Some graphic there, I think, that to understand what's happening up there for individuals age 65 plus years. None of you is 65 plus. I'm almost there, but and you're going to think like, oh, okay, you know what? Yeah, maybe my parents are in this category, but I'm not there. I should not worry about it. Well, 73% of the individuals above 65 years old have at least 1 in 10 common chronic diseases. And by the way, there's other stats that show that each one of them has minimum 3 chronic conditions, actually. All these chronic conditions cannot be treated and looked at separate ways, as is in the current medical model. We tried to do that for quite a few decades, and it's not working. Our population is not only Canada, it's becoming sicker and sicker. These are all interrelated conditions that have in common impaired detoxification, high oxidation stress, mitochondrial and cell membrane dysfunction. And yes, what has to do all of these together? They're caused by underlying methylation defects. And when I say defects, it's not necessarily by birth. I'm going to talk about that later. By treating the root causes, supporting methylation, optimizing health is possible for many of these individuals, and actually prevention of disease and chronic diseases even before birth, at the time of conception, is possible as well. If you're saying, like, you know what, I'm not 65 plus years old, let's go to the other side of the spectrum there. And this is, and I'm going to move this from here because I don't see infant mortality in Canada. And this is from 2018 annual report on international findings in comparison with other industrialized countries. And I don't see 2 or 3 of them, which I know for sure there are better than Canada. But the best one is Iceland and Finland. It's way on the bottom here. Look at where Canada is. And if you really count all these countries there, it's number 30. That's pretty bad, isn't it? And sometimes we're happy there and we're better than the United States, but it's nothing really to be happy about. So again, the problem is not only with age population, it's not by age, it's even from infancy. Top cause of death in Canada each year between 2014 and 2018 for infants, that's 1 year old, under 1 year old, is congenital malformations, deformations, and chromosomal abnormalities. If you understand any of those names or any of those words, you understand that this has to do with methylation. And I wrote there, what's the best, what's the more noble way to, you know, as a practitioner to support humanity, serve your, you know, your folks around you, even your family, then other than prepare your clients and your family for healthy pregnancy, the women to support the woman during pregnancy. So the infant mortality goes to almost 0, and the new added genetic SNPs, or that's those variations, are avoided, because that's a new problem that we see for quite a few years. It's not only the SNPs, not only the genetic mutations that you have or you inherit from one or the other parent or both of them, but there are way more SNPs than the parents had that they were seeing in newborns. Knowing how to interpret and support methylation obviously is necessary in order to do that service. Oops. Oh, a problem with mine. Okay. So what is your typical client really that has methylation issues? And when I read this, you're going to see that if you are practicing already for a few years, you're going to say, wait a second, these are all my clients. And you're right, these are all your clients. Some of them are really, really methylation, really, really big problems, like sick all the time. Serious allergies and intolerances from food, environmental allergies, intolerances, low tolerance to chemical exposure, and so on. Signs of high toxicity like skin issues, headaches, migraines, nausea, insomnia, low energy, estrogen dominance, or other hormonal problems, imbalances. Teratogenicity, which is miscarriages. We had huge amount of them the last 2.5 years. Stillbirth, babies born with birth defects that are not necessarily they're not necessarily from what the parents have as SNPs, but obviously they're coming from the parents. Metabolic issues like obesity and others, chronic conditions from diabetes to cardiovascular disease, all autoimmune conditions have methylation problems. Rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, lupus, MS, and so on. Just the whole list. That starts with methylation. All neurological conditions, including anxiety, depression, autism, all cancers, they start with methylation issues. So what is methylation? So if you never put your nose a little bit into methylation sounds very simple, but it's complicated. So the addition of a single carbon group with 3 hydrogen atoms onto a compound. So these are 2 very, very simple examples there, uracil and thymine. If you don't know what those are doing, that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit about that in our workshop. They have to do with the DNA and RNA. Pretty important, right? So that uracil, when it gets that monocarbon, a single carbon group with the 3 hydrogen atoms there, which is methyl group. This is what that is. So when it's methylated, it has a completely different function in the body. So it sounds simple, but it's not. So what are the functions of methylation? So adding that particular group, methyl group, to something, to a substrate, we call it. Well, pretty important. And then you're going to see, when I'm going through this list, you're going to see why in every one of your clients, you will see methylation problems. Gene expression regulation, so turning on and off genes, good or bad. Detoxification, processed chemicals, endogenous, biotic compounds, so inside and outside of us. Build and metabolize neurotransmitters, really important, right? Process hormones like estrogen and many others. Produce energy, produce CoQ10, carnitine. Yeah, we're taking, I just took this morning, actually, right before this, and I'm getting a little bit high here from it. I'm going to explain, maybe if I have time, maybe there's a question about that. How can you get high from CoQ10 and carnitine? Because you make too much of something. Creatine and ATP. So we produce energy through methylation. Produce protective coating of the nerves through myelination. So this has to do an MS. So what is MS? It's a problem of methylation. Multiple sclerosis, right? Build and maintain cell membranes of phosphatidylcholine. Build immune cells like natural killer cells and T cells. DNA and histone synthesis. And if you have not heard about it, histone, that has something to do with supporting the chromosome and kind of a pack in the chromosome there in nucleus, and has a role in gene expression. Okay. So what is this? If that's the function of methylation, you understand now why every one of your clients will have some kind of methylation from somewhere in that vast methylation cycle. So what are the factors actually that bring us to that disturbance in methylation? Well, genetic mutations to start with. So it's something that we get from our mother or our father, or both of them. And sometimes they're pretty bad, sometimes they're light and they don't do much, and they're really not important. But genetic mutations or polymorphism that we call, or SNPs, what we call them, right? Which comes from single nucleotide polymorphism, a long name. That's why we call them SNPs. So genetic mutations we're born with are important, but not the only cause of suppressed or faulty methylation. And actually, I will tell you that the rest of it is even more important to fix in your clients in the methylation cycle than even sometimes genetic mutations. So what are the factors that disturb methylation? Polymorphism. I just started with that. Lack of substrates without polymorphism. So I'm gonna when I pull up a drawing of the methylation cycle, how it looks like, I'm gonna tell you what that substrate is. Practically, it's something that we make something else from. Right? So it's a fabric if you want, but it's necessary to make something else through methylation. Lack of cofactors and substrates to drive methylation. For instance, methylcobalamin, we're going to talk about that. So that's form of B12, zinc, B6, B3 would be there, magnesium. At different points in the methylation cycle, these are cofactors. And even if you don't have a problem, a polymorphism problem with a gene, If any of these is lacking in those particular steps, that stuff does not go forward. Or many times it's going forward, but it's very, very slow. Exposure to toxins like chemicals, heavy metals, and anything from arsenic to mercury to copper to cadmium and so on and so forth. Internal toxins. For instance, I'm just going to give you one example that I always give in class. Candida makes a ton of toxins. One of them is acetaldehyde, which is very, very toxic and literally really, really scrambles the methylation cycle at some point of it. Medications, I'm going to have in another slide a whole list of them. Nitrous oxide. I'm going to talk a little bit about this today because I'm just seeing too many. Some people sent me the other day some TikToks with people. That's the laughing gas, right? Laughing gas that you get when you take your wisdom tooth out or whatever. You go to the. It's used also, unfortunately, in many times in surgeries as well. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it just because there's so many TikToks that make fun of people on, laughing gas. I want to explain to you later on in this webinar that that's not a laughing matter. It could actually kill somebody that has a methylation problem. Metformin, that's another one. There are many others. Excessive nutrients like niacin can deplete methyl group. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Actually, with niacin, we're going to use it all. I am using in my practice. I should have one right now, for instance, because I'm a little bit too hyper from the stuff that I took. And niacin is going to literally slow down the methylation cycle. It's going to slow down the neurotransmitter production. So you're not going to be so high anymore, right? So we use it both ways. Excess substrate inhibiting feedback. Like SAMI, I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we have a drawing in front of us, methylfolate. So sometimes we give somebody too much of a good thing and we tip them over to, depression. We can tip them over to feeling really out of their mind and starting throwing things in the house or even beating up your parents and stuff like that. Yes, I have seen cases like that. Lack of sleep or restless sleep. That's another one that impairs methylation, high stress, which is a big one. And impairs actually the second pathway of the methylation after the methionine cycle, after the folic cycle, the methionine cycle, where there's another cycle, bioperine is called, where we make neurotransmitters. So what is a nitrous oxide? I said a little bit about it. This is bad. And I'm not going to go through, this is more for the workshop, but I'm going to go through, I'm going to pick and choose some of the things that these papers, the scientific papers, that quite a few of them actually talk about this for the past 10 years. This one is from 2007. So nitrous oxide it's used a lot in surgery and anesthesia and actually even in dentistry. Many adverse effects, increased risk of teratogenicity. So if you give it to a lady who's pregnant, she may lose that particular fetus, or not only the child may be born, but with defects. Immunodeficiency, impaired wound healing after surgery, for instance, increased plasma homocysteine concentration, which may increase post-operative cardiovascular complications and even accidents, cardiovascular accidents. Another one of the most clinically significant adverse effects in nitrous oxide associated with vitamin B12 deficiency resulting in paresthesia, myelopathy. Myelopathy is what's happening in multiple sclerosis. So myelin sheath that is destroyed practically around the nerves. And subacute combined degeneration of the spinal cord. And sometimes that's irreversible. And look at this. Do you think that people who, who use too much nitrous oxide, and that unfortunately is one drug of the choice of very young people these days? You can buy, by the way, nitrous oxide cans. You can buy them on Amazon. When I read this one, actually, I think this particular paper is talking about that. It was published in 2020. And I could not believe it. And I went to Amazon. Yeah, you can buy them. There are lots of them there, right? They're used actually a drug of choice for many people who like the laughing gas, like to be happy. The interesting thing is that this particular paper shows that Also, after one single exposure to nitrous oxide, this is susceptibility to vitamin B12 deficiency, and some of these some of the worst defects or effects possible. Shortcomings of this paper is that they did not talk about oxidation B12, and actually they did not look at all the NPHFR methylation problem. Another paper, actually, it showed that the myelination involved in peripheral and the central nervous system is happening. And I did not put it here, but I read an article a medical article talking about a 6-year-old who died actually after, I think it was a 3-hour operation where nitrous oxide was used. And the death was through demyelination. Actually, it was not immediate. The boy woke up and he died only a few weeks after that from demyelination. So really, really, it's not a laughing, the laughing gas is not a laughing matter. And this people who have a methylation problem, specifically NPHFR methylation problem, disturbance, I'm going to talk about it in another slide, they're the most susceptible to this. And I'm telling you this because you're going to go to take out your wisdom tooth, or maybe you have a child that is going to do that at some point. Make sure that you test all the genome of that child or yourself before you even go there to do that. So this is the methylation cycle. This is the whole methylation cycle simplified. Yes, it looks way more than that. Actually, I have mine. I should have brought it here too. It's in another room actually to show you. I have it actually. Somebody gave it to me as a present some years ago, my birthday present. It was, oh wow. And literally it's about a quarter of one of my biggest walls. That's how big it is. And methylation cycle is a big part of it. So you see that methylation cycle is anywhere from here to the end of it. And by the way, methionine cycle is way more complicated than this, even folate cycle. So even the bioperine cycle, which is here somewhere on the right side, if you see my cursor, I hope you do, it's where in the bioperine cycle, we are making the neurotransmitters from salmon. So that's not even represented. This one is going to take in our workshop, we're going to talk, it's a whole page only about this transsulfuration cycle, this one on the bottom here, and at the end of it, we make glutathione. So it's way more complicated, but why I pull the simplified one? To understand that there are quite a few, all these in these colored boxes there, all these are enzymes. So they have to do something, right, for those cycles to go, to the wheels to turn. You see, literally, these are some wheels. I always explain like wheels that are turning together. But also, we will see in these particular enzymes, every one of these can have a genetic mutation. And by the way, there are a lot more than this. Even in the folate cycle, and only 2 on this particular pathway, and there are about 20 of them, right? And about 10 of them very, very important. So again, it's complicated. So let's break it a little bit further. This one is, if that one is a simplified, this I call it a bird's eye view of the methylation cycle. It's a very, very, very simplified one. But here I put a little bit more of the, everything with yellow would be an enzyme, right? Transferase, reductase, synthase, everything with ASE at the end, that's a enzyme, right? So it's making possible some conversion here. So any one of these, and actually a lot more, they can have a genetic mutation from birth or from gestation, from before birth, actually from parents or during the gestational period in the mother's womb. Also, there are quite a few here. There are only a few of them. B6, there are twice here, B12. Here we have the methyl tetrafolate. And there's going to be a lot of B6, a lot of B3, and some others are going to be cofactors. The ones in green are cofactors. So you either don't have a substrate stuck, for instance, 5-methyl THF. Here is a substrate for methionine. You can't make methionine if you don't have this. That's a substrate. But also, if there are some glitches in the enzymes, you cannot make whatever it has to be made, but also if you don't have enough cofactors. And if I would, in workshop, I'm going to show you at the end of the workshop at some point how many times B6 appears actually in the whole methylation cycle from the beginning until the end of it. So it's pretty important to have it. So let's go a little bit. I'm going to talk only about this folate cycle. It's not really, should not be named folate cycle. I did not find in the literature anywhere that says folate cycle really should be named folate cycle. And you're going to see in a few minutes why is that very important, not to confuse the two of them. So the folate cycle is also called one carbon metabolism because it's just that one carbon with the three hydrogen atoms there, right? So folate, what we call folate, is the main regulator of the methylation cycle. That's how the methylation cycle starts. If it's not starting, you cannot really go through any of the other pathways until the end of it, right? You cannot detoxify, you cannot make neurotransmitters, you cannot make at the very end of it that important antioxidant, glutathione, and so on. The generic term folate is used for about 150 different forms of food folates, plus the synthetic folic acid. So we're talking class in SIM2, and you heard that many times that folic acid should never ever be used. That is synthetic, and I'm going to tell you for quite a few, I prepared about 3 or 4 slides why we should never touch that and why you should really, really pay attention, especially in your clients who are, pregnant or want to become pregnant. And this refers not only to the woman, but refers to the man as well, because the sperm quality is directly related to the quality of their metabolism, their quality of their methylation cycle, what's going on in the men's body as well, not only the woman's body. Okay, so there we have about 150. So how do we distinguish between them? There's another slide that talks about testing. So what are the functions of folate in all this metabolism, methylation thing? Synthesis of nucleic acids for DNA production and repair, quite important, right? And that's how you understand why something that is starting bad with a folic cycle, it can lead very easily to cancer, right? Or inability actually to reverse cancer and to heal from cancer. Also transfer RNA, that has a key role in protein synthesis. Single carbon metabolism, methylation, also has a role in neurotransmitter production, detoxification, not in this particular folate cycle. It's the folate cycle actually it's needed, the end of the folate cycle is needed for methionine production and to run this SAMe cycle, that is biopterin cycle, where we're making actually making neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters have to be made, but also detoxified, because if you make them and to say you cannot break down these catecholamines, then you're going to be like, somebody has to peel you off the ceiling, right? So those have to be made, but has to be broken down. It's in the same cycle, the second cycle. Formation and maturation of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelet production. So functions of folate, it's really, really, really important. This is why it's so important not to have the right one, not the synthetic folate. I'll explain that further. So is folic acid same as folate? No, 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 no. And I hope you knew that already from my class or Sim1 class, if you already did these two with I-Chen. So no is the answer. Folic acid is not equal to folate, and it's only one type of folate, and it's the synthetic folate. It's not found in nature, and that has some tragic repercussions when it's used, especially at before birth of a child, or even before conception of a child and later on. Actually, it's tragic to be used by anybody, and I'm going to let you know why. Folic acid may be used by your body, after undergoing multiple conversions, but not everybody can do that. It's using a lot of substrates, using a lot of cofactors, is using a lot of enzymes that maybe you don't have them working because of some genetic mutations. A lot of the folic acid, actually, that's one bad thing that's happening. It's sitting there in the blood unused. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to look at your blood work then, if that's just sitting there and maybe you don't even take folate, and you make the folic acid test, blood test, and it's through the roof when your doctor's going to tell you, oh, don't take folic acid, and you're like, I'm not taking it. So what's going on there? It's just sitting there. It's not used because it cannot be used by the body. Does it work to prevent folic acid? Does it work to prevent neural tube defects? You're going to tell me, because you know what? There's so much science there. Yes, it does. Bifida and so on. Yes, it does. But to what kind of degree it does and what else it does there? There are many more negative side effects that do not warrant its use at all, absolutely at all. The problem there is that it's not only the supplements we're talking about. In Canada, like in USA, and in about 38, I believe, if I remember well, countries in the world, it's mandatory to be added to a lot of foods, including the breads. If you don't eat breads made or they're sold in health stores or organic and so on. Folate's clinically relevant. What we're going to talk about is folic acid, the synthetic one, folinic acid. I'm going to show exactly where that comes. And this, sometimes you give that as a supplement, depending of the, I'm going to talk a little bit about that just to show you when I show you this particular cycle. Methylfolate or tetrafolate, methyltetrafolate, hydrofolate is the whole name there, or MTHF folate. And this is the one that you probably know already that you should give to your clients, but not always. Again, sometimes folinic acid has to be a choice. So just looking at the chemical structure here, it's not a big deal there. It's not a lot of difference there, right? This is folic acid, and the only different thing is this. Folinic, by the way, it's an offshoot of something in between these two conversions, and the end results is methyl tetrahydrofolate. So you see that at the very end, you have that carbon, the single carbon, and with 3 hydrogen atoms, right? So that's a methyl group. So we go through a lot of work before we do that. And this is the work that you have to put as a body there in the methylation cycle, the folate cycle. From the folic acid, or even dietary folate, which is not folic acid, is the natural, one of the 150 forms of folate in nature coming from food, especially greens, right? This is what we have to do in order to finish that folate cycle and to use this. The body can use this methylated form of the folate, and actually this can be used by the next cycle in the methylation, which is the methionine cycle. So what do we need here? All these, DHFR again, SHMT, that's a 1 and a 2, they're 2 different ones. And then THFR, this is kind of a typo that R just has to be right beside it. And THFR and many others, those are enzymes. And all those enzymes can have at least 1 or 2 or 3 glitches. Beside that, you have the B6, we have the B12, we have B2, riboflavin there. So these are cofactors. Any of these, there's a glitch of any of these, or there's a glitch meaning that you don't have the cofactors enough. Maybe B6, for instance, has another affinity for something else happening in the body, because B6 is used for a lot of other things in the body, and it's not happening here. That means that all this thing is slowing down. The folic acid, that DHFR, that's a very slow conversion into DHF. Very, very extremely slow conversion. Sometimes it's not even happening. And you have that UNFA thing, which is kind of a sounds like an UNFA. Sounds like an UNFA. That one is an unmetabolized folic acid. Unmetabolized folic acid. It's just sitting there, and actually it's making it's a very, very, very negative side effect. It's not just sitting there. It's sitting there and occupying where the other folate should go. So conversion requires uncooked leafy greens. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. When you cook leafy greens, when you cook folate is going to disappear. There is some folate left when you steam something, but you cook it, it's like totally disappears. Working enzymes, I just talked about some of them. Receptors that are available. So yeah, you have enzymes, but where are they going? Where is that folate going? The receptors have to be available. When you have that lots of this UMPA thing, unmetabolized folic acid, if that is not happening. Also, it has to be transported to the sites, transferring through the membrane, also transfer in the intracellular membrane, right? Intracellular matrix. Also, the vitamins have to be the cofactors. Also, very, very important, I put it in red because a lot of people, you know, they're very well from your clients that don't have a very low stomach acid, very high stomach acid or normal stomach acid or low pH, right? If you don't have that, this does not happen. I'm not going to go through the names and so on. I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to talk next about this particular, I'm going to talk about a few other genes that are interfering with this folate cycle. So anywhere here. But also I'm going to talk a little bit more about that SHMT, which is the serine hydroxy methyltransferase, and also obviously about NPHFR at the very end. So what I want you to understand here, if you look at this particular one, which comes way before the NPHFR ever comes into play, if there's any problem with that SHMT 1 or 2, there are 2 different variations there, then guess what? NPHFR is not even valid anymore. You can have the NPHFR all what you want, but if that cannot convert to that 510 methylane PHF, you cannot make anything out of it, right? And this is exactly the point where that 5 formula is used, and that formula is the folinic acid. And this comes also as a supplement form. I'm going to go through that information and that when to use it more and so on a lot more in the workshop. But just for you to know that you're not all like dead if you don't have this particular enzyme working. There's a little bit working, but it's very, very slow. So you're going to have to put a lot of B6. And many times actually you're going to have to do this one because folinic acid is transferred, as you see, up and down. So it can go converting up and down to help with purine synthesis, which is our DNA, practically important there for DNA production, DNA repair as well, and also goes down to meet the NPHFR and finally to methylate the folate. Other genes that can have SNPs are specific only for folate cycle. In the workshop, we're going to talk a lot about each cycle in the path, all the pathways, what kind of SNPs they have and so on. Some of them are more important than others. Some of them have to do with transfer through the membrane, other regulating intracellular folate. Other ones, for instance, this one is pretty important because it slows down apoptosis, and that means very high cancer risk, right? This one leads to megaloblastic anemia. So no matter how much iron and how much stuff you give to your client, if you don't know that they have this, you're not going to know what exactly to how to support it. This one leaves magnesium. Everybody's low in magnesium. The other one, it's important for purine synthesis and so on. This particular 2, very, very important. And I wrote them in the red. I'm going to talk a little bit about, maybe for 5 minutes about them, because not only they're most prevalent one from all these SNPs in the folate cycle, this particular first cycle only, but also because they are very, very important to understand and to support and to bypass if necessary. This particular one needs B6 in the methylated form, obviously. So if you give B6 as a cofactor, obviously you're going to give the methylated form, the pyridoxal 5-phosphate. You're not going to do the B6 that has to be methylated. It's going to rob more methylation power from your cycle, right? This particular deficiency actually means low collagen, rheumatoid arthritis, joint tissues and stuff like that. DNA repair is going down and high cancer risk. The other one, SHMT2, is primary stressor glycine, and this one will impair the last pathway, which is making, at the end of it, is making glutathione. So pretty important, right, to have enough glutathione. I have that one, actually I don't have this one, but I have the glitch right before this one. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, maybe 2 today. And so I know that my body does not make enough glutathione. So whenever I'm sick, I know to take glutathione as a supplement. Otherwise, I wouldn't. The anti-HFR, it's linked to high risk of cardiovascular disease, premature death, neurological diseases, all kind of anything from bipolar to depression and so on, and high risk of cancer. So this is that SHMT1 and 2. So you see how important that is. First of all, glycine will not be made here. This is substrate. So from this, we're making glutathione. So if this one is a very first pathway is not working, then the very last pathway in the methylation cycle is going to be impacted as well. Also here, I think I mentioned that already, they will give folinic acid. If this thing is not happening, we cannot make it, we cannot methylate anything. And then we're going to give another substrate, actually folinic acid, that is going to ensure the substrate for the methylation. Also, that folinic acid actually is going to help with the purines and DNA and RNA. So there are ways to go around something that is not working right, but you have to know, first of all, what you're talking about, and you have to know how to address that. And first of all, obviously, you have to have your genome tested in order to know that you have that. The MTHFR, it's a little bit more complicated, but I try to talk general things about it here. So if you don't know anything about what's heterozygous, what's homozygous, that's heterozygous means one copy, a gene from one parent. So let's say my mother, and I know that's my mother by symptoms and all what she died of and so on. My mother had a heterozygous, whatever, MTHFR. I know that I get it from her. If one copy for the gene from each parent, so you have double whammy there, it's called homozygous. And what I'm talking about that, because this MTHFR enzyme, if you have a problem from birth, this is going to slow down considerably or not. It's never going to shut down completely. We'll be dead without that. But the slowing down is proportionate to which one you have. So there are two possible, actually there are more than two, but these are the only ones that we can work on. These are two possible mutations. That's C6717, they're A1298C. In the workshop, I'm going to teach you what those numbers or what they mean practically, right? So if you're heterozygous, so that means that from one of your parents, let's say from your mom, you got this one, you lose 40% of the function of that MTHFR enzyme. It's pretty bad, right? Guess what? If you have the same MTHFR C6, whatever, from both of your parents, mother and father, you lose 75% of the function. These people are pretty sick. And I do have some clients like that. The other one, it's not as bad as this one. Again, with loss of, if you have it from one parent, 20% of loss of function. If you have it from both parents, 40% of function. For both mutations, heterozygous, if you get both mutations, one from mother, the other one from the father, or the other way around, you lose 40% of the loss of function. And somebody asked me, actually, I did some methylation in another workshop for another organization at some point and some time ago, and they asked me, like, can you have all four of them? Can you have both of them from both parents? Yes. I never encountered one of those people. I assume that those people, a lot of them do die in infancy. That's how bad that is. It's almost like 100% blockage of that function, right? Can you have three of them? Yes, you can have. So you can have, for instance, homozygous, and then from another parent, you have this one. You can have that as well. If you think that, you know what, maybe I don't have that, or I don't think I have that because, I don't know. Well, think twice. Population, most the risk of MTHFR, this particular homozygous. So again, homozygous means from both parents, and that's 75% loss of function. Mexicans, Italians, Hispanics, generally speaking, doesn't matter where you live, if there's Hispanic, Italian descendants, especially Campania, Sicily, Veneto, almost everybody has it there. Mexicans, for instance, have it about, I think, more than 45 or 50% of the people have this. Mexicans. Northern China, a lot of it Hispanics and so on, and obviously in Canada, we have a lot of Hispanics, a lot of Italian descendants and so on, right? So again, Chinese descendants. So again, this was published in, I can't remember when, I didn't write it there, but it's a pretty interesting graphical and ethnic variation. Actually, and you'll see ethnic variation even in Canada. I think Alberta is for whatever reason, is the highest number for this homozygous. But look at this, 45% of the worldwide population has at least one copy of this particular glitch. One copy means 40% loss of function. So half of us, and I know I have it because I tested myself. So again, don't think that you don't have it. Half of us here present are going to have that. So when to test for MTHFR? Do I test every one of my clients? Yes. I want them to test, but no, they don't test. So not specific MTHFR. By the way, if you go from your doctor to read your doctor and just test MTHFR, I'm going to pay for that. And I'm not sure if it's ever done in Ontario at another level. If you're really, really sick, if it's covered, but usually it's not covered. I have clients who paid more money than they would have paid for our 23andMe to do the whole genome. So I'm telling people, do the whole genome. 23andMe and another company, whatever you choose to do the whole genome for the same money that it would cost you only one particular gene. Very, very important to test your clients when they have anything like medical reaction, methotrexate. A few of my clients are on this. 2 of them did not do well at all. They had to be pulled off that, and I knew immediately that I have an MTHFR. This one is used in chemotherapy, actually. Also, it's used for a lot of people that have really, really bad rheumatoid arthritis and some other autoimmune diseases, unfortunately. Nitrous oxide, I just explained that. Recurrent blood clots, so like keeps happening and happening. Elevated homocysteine, this is a big one, and this is actually the test that every one of them should do for themselves. Cardiovascular disease, everybody with cardiovascular disease, so recurrent miscarriages in a woman. Unfortunately, this is not done, and I do work right now with 3 ladies who had miscarriages, and one of them actually tested herself. I have to look at her genome. Which one does she have? ADD, ADHD, bipolar depression, sound like really, really bad stuff. People, before they were put on antidepressant, they should be tested for methylation problems because this is where it comes from. So talking about testing, what can we do there? So this is a review. It's published in PubMed some time ago, not long time ago. It identifies a few 3 or 4 things for priority folate biomarkers. And this is a really, really good thing for you to use in your practice as well. Obviously, we're not doctors. We cannot, the only thing we can do, we can put it on a list and ask our clients to go to their doctors or in a walk-in clinic and do those tests. So those are serum folate. That's the folate that has everything under the sun there, right? All types of folate, including that folic acid and including dietary and so on. The red blood cell RBC folate, but it's not covered by OHIP. It costs about $50 to do, but it's very well worth to pay this $50 in Ontario at least. A plasma homocysteine. This one, it's not covered by OHIP. It costs about, I think I paid about $85 or $90 for this. Yes, it's expensive. I heard that in some other labs, it's about $80, but it is expensive, but you have to do it. So these are the priority folate biomarkers. So serum folate, this one does not really show much. If it's totally out to lunch, too low or too high, it's going to show something, but it's within whatever minimum, maximum is considered normal. It's not going to tell you the story. So this one includes the synthetic folate, which is folic acid, and supplementation, and from food, dietary, everything together. So all those folates. Also on metabolized folic acid can be also present. It's present in a lot of people, especially people who, I have a few clients who, before working with them, even after I started working with them for a while, now they're okay. They cook their food and so on, but they never cooked anything. So people who never cook anything can either, it doesn't even have to be junk food. Bought food that is already prepared by somebody else in a restaurant and a box and so on will have a lot of folic acid. So this one, if that serum folate is really, really high, that doesn't really mean that you have folate. It means that probably that folic acid is really, really high. Also, the serum folate doesn't mean much if it's high. If it's low, yes, it means it's low. But if it's very high, it doesn't mean much because probably this is not transported and does not enter the cells. That's probably the problem there. RBC folate, why do I insist on this one? It's a much better indicator of the status of the folate in the previous 3 to 4 months, but also of the vitamin 12, B12 deficiency. Why? Because B12 is required actually for the folate to get into the cell. So if RBC folate is low, then you will know the B12 deficiency is there as well. A tip, you always want to test both RBC folate and folic acid. I'd like to test that on too, and serum folate and RBC B12 at the same time. I'm really upset when the doctor, my family doctor for my client, tests like one at a time. Like they test B12 and that's not good enough. It's RBC B12. By the way, not covered by OHIP in Ontario, another $45, right? So it's going to cost, the whole thing is going to cost about $200, but we're well worth it. Plasma homocysteine provides a functional indicator of the folate status. I'm going to show you a little bit later because it comes into the methionine cycle, and linked to methionine. At the end of methionine cycle, we make this homocysteine that has to be break down in another cycle that comes underneath it or after that transformation cycle. And sometimes that does not happen. But even if that happens, part of the homocysteine has to be recirculated. And I'm gonna show you that a little bit so to understand what I'm talking about. Here. So the homocysteine has to be broken down in this particular transformation cycle. But why high homocysteine would show you a functional test of deficiency of this, of the folate? Because partially homocysteine has to go back and make those two wheels to turn literally and to make more methionine and tetrahydrofolate. So if this particular folate is low here and this particular wheel is not turning, it's not going to turn the second wheel. So if the second wheel is not turning, this homocysteine is not going to be recirculated here, reused, literally reused partially, and you're going to end up with high homocysteine. So this is why the high homocysteine in the blood is going to show you practically that it's something wrong with the folate. There are several causes, about 5 or 6 of them of high homocysteine. I'm going to talk about them in workshop, not to be kind of confused there where's it coming from sometimes. Other biomarkers of folate status, neutrophil low count. This is really good luck if your doctor will ever write this in a requisition, but I have seen it in some of my clients. So this is hypersegmentation of neutrophils. So high mature neutrophils that respond to inflammation and infection. So because you see in somebody who's not methylating, somebody who has low folate, you will see lots of inflammation, infection, maybe infections as well. Serum folic acid, I talked about that already. That shows you free on unmetabolized folic acid. Other issue to take into consideration when you see your blood work. You know what? I questioned this, and honestly, I think I have a bad name already in that place when I'm usually going to take my blood once every few years to see my blood, how it looks like and so on, my blood work. Because I always ask them, like, why you're not freezing it? Why are you just keeping it there? Because science shows that folate in the serum and plasma degrades very rapidly. And when it's a sample is taken out of your body, really, it has to be immediately should be processed, and it's not processed. We're taking it. Has to be frozen promptly. So again, some of I question sometimes some of the results that we get from those blood tests. So, okay, we have a problem there. How do we address that? So we have a folate cycle problem. How do we address it? Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about xenobiotics. So stuff that shouldn't be on our body, stuff that should not interfere with our body, right? It's interactions with drugs, and there's a lot of them, anticonvulsants, stuff used as sulfa drugs used in inflammatory bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis and what do you call it, Crohn's, right? Likewise, heavy alcohol consumption. So this is xenobiotics coming from lifestyle, alcohol consumption, smoking are also linked to low folate status, and this is very, very serious. Even low alcohol consumption, it will deplete folate. Does not matter if you drink a bottle, obviously a bottle will deplete much more than a glass, but again, folate status will be low. Non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin, ibuprofen, how many people take that? Loads of people are taking very large therapeutic doses sometimes versus to treat pain like fibromyalgia, arthritis, and so on. those dosages interfere with folate metabolism. And a lot of people do that. So automatically they slow down their methylation. Others antibiotics there, cholesterol lowering agents, cholestyramine. This is a pretty good one in my workshop for mold, how to treat mold. This cholestyramine is fantastic actually for treating mold because it soaks up all that mold in the biliary ducts. But again, it's taken at the same time with folic acid or a few hours only, 1 or 2 hours only after that, it will decrease the absorption of folic acid. Methotrexate, I said that already, it's a folate antagonist. So again, if one of your clients is on that, you're going to have to understand how to bypass that. In this particular case, I can give you the tip. I know already because I was looking at that. A few of my clients are on that because of their autoimmune disease. You're supplementing folinic acid, not with tetrafolate. Other antifolate molecules current use in cancer therapy, there are quite a few of them. I'm not going to say all of them. So also anti-malaria drugs, there's some of them, antibiotics, some of them, blood pressure medication, like this particular one, it's a potassium sparing diuretic. Sulfa drugs treating colitis, I think I said it already. Oral contraceptives, a big one in our North American population, containing high dose of estrogen indicated adverse effects on folate status. All these things are coming, by the way, all the last 2 slides from the Linus Pauling Institute of Micronutrient Information Center. And again, state of the folate. It's a whole paper, scientific paper on that. So how to address disturbances other than medication, other than seeing what exactly is depleting there? Well, start from the beginning. And you learn this as CM1 if you already did that at IHN and maybe other institutions if you're listening to this. You have to have a comprehensive intake questionnaire. You really have to understand where you stand there. And in-depth history. So in-depth history means from conception. From conception, even before conception, I would say a year before conception. And if I work with some clients or my clients for conception, I'm going to work with them at least a year before conception. Otherwise, if they're not prepared to do that, I'm not going to work with them. Add to the timeline. So the timeline could be a timeline with some years there from when you're born to where you are right now. Symptoms, add symptoms, conditions, medical procedures, medications, current or past medication, the last 5 or 10 years. Occupation. Mother's occupation before and while she was pregnant, very, very important there, right? Life stress, the traumas, current stress at work or home, possible exposure to toxins. Are you swimming? I work with a few, for instance, swimming athletes, and they're pretty bad with the methylation because they're swimming in that, still swimming probably in that chlorinated water 6 days out of 7. What is your postal code? I wrote it here. Do you live in Sarnia? And if you live in Canada, you know what I'm talking about, Ontario, or you live in, pristine woods of the, Rocky Mountain, right? So where do you live? Are you growing on a farm? Do you live near a farm that sprays all the time, pesticides, insecticides, and stuff like that? That's important. Oops. Other than that questionnaire that you can put together, first of all, you have to look at the diet. And I put here all the steps in the methylation. Actually, there are much more here. If you blow up that neurotransmitters and so on, because all of them the substrates for neurotransmitters, you can get them from diet. So every one of these spots, diet has a major impact of how you methylate, how we move, or how the circles of the wheels are turning. Diet, in the diet, we have to support the pathways with the substrates and the cofactors. The cofactors would be the vitamins, right? Natural food folate, specifically, I'm talking about folate pathway support here, not the whole methylation. The whole methylation is a lot more work to do. So natural food folates from greens, particularly, can be unstable during cooking. So there's a lot of science about that. So to get the folate from plant foods, pay attention if you're a vegetarian or vegan. You have to consume the plants raw or sprouted. Obviously, if there's beans have some folates as well. Grains have some folates. You're not going to consume them raw. You're not going to munch on them, but you're going to sprout them and then consume them raw. Metabolic study in non-pregnant women estimated the bioavailability of the food folates, so these are the natural folates, are only 50% relative to that of synthetic folic acid. What does it mean? It means that it's very easy to get the synthetic folic acid and to block all of your sites there where the real folate has to go. It's much easier to metabolize, not metabolize, but to get actually to get the synthetic folic acid into the membrane of the cells than to get the real one. Diets rich in folate liver, if you're not a vegan or vegetarian, it's the absolutely the best thing to do. Yeast has a lot of it too. Green leafy vegetables, asparagus. You can steam a little bit this one, and it's going to lose some folate, but not too much. Beans and legumes. I wanted to see the effects of cooking for the liver. If the liver and meats in general have a lot of folate, like where actually not meats, but liver specifically, any type of animal liver. And how do we eat that? Can you eat it raw? Yeah, you can eat it raw. You have to prepare it and so on. That's not impossible, but I don't think anybody has a palate for that. So I want you to see if there's any kind of statistic or any kind of studies done. And yes, I discovered a study done pretty recently specifically on 3 different methods of cooking for the chicken liver. And 2 of the methods actually were pretty good. Actually, all methods were pretty good compared to what folate you get from plant food. So really, really hear me here when I say that. So there's not much difference or statistically different from raw liver folate content if you prepare it with sous vide. And I had to really, to be honest, I had to look for this. I had no clue what that is. That is something that I know I'm never going to tell my clients to ever do, and I'm never going to do that. So how is that? It's the new method of cooking that I've seen on some Facebook posts and all that stuff. People vacuuming in a plastic bag with a Ziploc bag, vacuum the meat and immerse it for 75 minutes or whatever. This particular thing was 75 minutes of the chicken liver into boiling, into 60 degrees Celsius water. So it's not boiling water, but it's still hot water that will degrade that plastic, that plastic can get into the chicken. So I'm not going to do that. But steaming, look at this. It's almost identical, as folate content with the raw liver, which is pretty good. They also looked at the grilling. Where's that? Liver cooked combi of oven or grilled. It has a much higher content, obviously much lower than 761, but it's almost like not half, but it's much more abundant, the folate abundant in plant foods. So again, foods that are from animal foods are way, way higher folate level after they're cooked. So when you talk about diet, you also have to think about vitamin B6. Again, this is for folate pathway, not other pathway in the methylation cycle. B2 sources, B12 sources. And again, there are some of them like whole grains, and pay attention. Some of you may be on autoimmune paleo diet or on paleo diet, ketogenic diet that doesn't have grains, right? So a grain-free diet, it's very low in B6. You are impairing your methylation cycle at different spots and different pathways, starting from the first one. So really pay attention there. B6 supplementation with a methylated form is necessary. B2 sources, lots of them are. There are some vegetarian, vegan, like tempeh and soybeans, but the other ones are fish and meat. There are some almonds there, squid, salmon, and so on, but generally speaking, mushrooms are high in B2 as well. B12 sources, you know them, I don't have to tell you. And these are, we're talking only about animal foods here. There's nothing else, no other source of that. Need glycine. This is not the first folate, it is the first folate cycle. If you have that glitch with that SHMT, and I talked a little bit about that before, if this one is slower, then you need glycine for the last cycle, where we're supposed to make glutathione. Otherwise, that cycle is not happening. Sources of glycine, gelatin, bone broth, seafood, soybean, lentils, kidney beans, peanuts are very high in that as well. So there are mixed plant foods, and but most of them, or best of the glycine, it's in gelatin coming from bone broth and stuff like that, from meats and from animal foods. Lifestyle, it's very, very important as well. Evaluate environmental exposure. So again, I mentioned that already. Addiction like smoking, alcohol consumption, workaholism. Where that comes into place at the cycle after this is the next cycle, the second pathway, the methylation pathway, where we make neurotransmitters, because stress interferes directly with that particular pathway. So it's not directly into the folate pathway, but it's the next one. Also support detoxification. The more support you have, and the more you detoxify through the sweating, through colonics, cough enemas, transcreen brushing, proper breathing, and so on, is the less you put accent you put on that methylation cycle. So methylation cycle is going to breeze through it, right? So how about supplementation? Because I know that some of you are going to ask me, how about supplementation? Because we came to this webinar to know what to supplement. Well, it's not working like that. And I'm going to totally disappoint you here, but hear me out what I'm saying. And multivitamins, first of all, they may not be best suited for methylation for a lot of your clients, unless you know that they have no methylation problems. Why? Because when you throw at them everything under the sun, you're not going to know why they react like that or why they don't get better. Right? So you usually for people at least that have really bad methylation, really bad symptoms, you start with 1 or 2 only nutrients at a time. Treat the patient, not the SNP. And I know I've done it before, and sometimes even now I am, inclined to do that until I catch myself, or I still do that if the person just totally refuses to pay the money to do the, not to me, but to a company that does the genetic makeup, right? So there are some websites and there are some things that probably use, like Gene RX, Strategene as well. I use both of them different times, that you plug in that genetic makeup, that raw data, and they spit you out all kind of information, which is fantastic information if you go to one of these 2 that I mentioned, and they're going to tell you what to do. They're going to tell you what to do with lifestyle. They're going to tell you what to do as exercise. They're going to tell you what to do as this and that, detoxification, and so on. They're going to spit out a long list also of supplementation. It's not how it works. You try to do all that stuff, and maybe your client is going to get better for a while. And you keep them on the same cycle, on the same supplements. Maybe they don't come to you. It happened to me a few times. They don't come back to you because they say, like, you know what, they just send you a month later or 2 months later. Oh my God, I feel so fantastic. I never felt so good in the last 20 years. And then it's exactly what happened to a client of mine. So for 1 year, I'm like, you know what, you can't be on that all the time. You will teach a tipping point where you get up the hill, you're going to feel fine, be well, and then you're going to come down so badly. And that's exactly what happened to a client of mine. I haven't seen her for a year. I said, you know what, you have to come to a follow-up. She came only twice. The 3rd time you have to come to, so I have to figure out what else to do with you. She didn't come. She continued the same protocol. Now she's so depressed. She just called me. Actually, she called me this morning. I know how many times. It's like, I'm desperate to see you. I'm so depressed. I've never seen being so bad. Right? So again, you can't just go theory. Oh, this is what is missing. There's something going to give. This is the dosage. And the dosage is so different from person to person. Every time you supplement, you have to understand what you're promoting from that cycle or the next pathways, maybe, or what you're inhibiting. Because they're giving a supplement, for instance, SAMI, you give it a lot of it, or B3, for instance, you will inhibit methylation cycle at some point. What other pathway are stimulated and inhibited? Regarding dosage, evaluate how the person feels. You have to really not only educate them, but for educating them how to use the supplements, which days to use, which days not to use. For instance, I'm going to tell you, I have genetically, I make a lower dopamine than normal. Right? And not always, some days when I wake up and feel like, okay, this is a day, I'm going to take some tyrosine. And there are days, you know what, in the past when I read, oh, dopa, I'm going to do tyrosine, I'm going to convert, lots of dopa. I'm going to be happy ever after. I'm going to have so much energy. I'm going to do everything, all these courses and webinars and all that stuff. And guess what? I took it for about a few days or a week, and then it was horrible, a horrible, horrible feeling of doom. What happened? I overdid it, right? So again, it's dosages. You have to educate your client, and very rarely that even B complex you have to take every day. And maybe if you have taken some supplements for quite a few years, you kind of know. You wake up and you're going to say, I'm not going to take B complex today. Or, oh, I wake up today. I think today I'm going to need some B complex, right? Ask client and monitor him or her what dosages make them feel better, feel the best. You start low, you go up and up and up, and you say, oh my God, I feel better. Oh my God, I feel even better than yesterday or a week ago. When you're over the tipping point, that's too bad. That's gone too far, right? So when they feel really nice, really good, stop there. You don't want them to go downhill. Downhill usually means either very high anxiety, as in the case of too much tyrosine, too much dopa, or depression, pain, fibromyalgia, and so on. Every one of your clients must have at home a bottle of niacin. And that's one thing that I do not have right now because I finished it. I gave my last samples to a client of mine to whenever she gets too high for what she's taking, and told her, you know what, take niacin, 50 grams niacin, milligrams of niacin every half an hour. When you feel better, just stop, don't take it anymore. And I'm gonna explain a lot of that with examples more in the workshop. And I think I'm almost done, so just bear with me. Unfortunately, I'm off the screen, and I don't see how many slides are left, but I think there are only a few of them. So this is one of the examples. They're talking about too much supplementation of something. So this is another picture. You see they're recycling homocysteine practically. So you need B12 for this to go into methionine. And we need here the methyltetrafolate or the folate in the methylated form for this wheel, methionine wheel, even to go around, right? To just totally to move. If we give SAMe, maybe one of you gave SAMe too, because you learned that SAMe is a precursor, can make neurotransmitters. So maybe somebody is depressed, somebody has low dopamine and whatever, right? Low serotonin levels, low and so on. And you give SAMe, and maybe they were okay for a while. And then after a while, the call is like, I don't know, this is not working for me. This is like something is going really, really wrong. And you have the tendency to say, no, stick with it. It's like maybe something else is going on, right? Just visit, just start, take it. And maybe some of you are going to say, take double dose or triple dose or whatever. I've seen that happen. But guess what? Too much SAMe is going to slow down methionine cycle, because methionine cycle does not have to make that substrate anymore. It's going to slow down this one. It's going to turn this wheel is going to turn very, very, very slow. And guess what? This wheel with it, because they turn together, right? It's going to start turning slow. So what's going to happen? Literally your methylation is going to slow down, with a whole repercussion, all the other cycles that are coming up, or all the other passes that are coming after that. So that's one of the many examples, and there are a lot of other examples actually in other pathways that I can give you, and I will give you during the workshop. This is actually what some of the information about what I just said. MTHFR recycles homocysteine makes SAMe. SAMe is used to make CoQ10 carnitine. The same thing is going to happen actually to get really, really high, and it happened to me a few times. You know, having a workshop the whole day, have to talk to them the whole day, 6 hours or so on, or I have, I talk in front of some people for the whole day or 2 days. I'm going to take some of this to make, just for the mitochondria. Well, sometimes it's too much. If you can't break that down, you're going to be totally hyper. And the last thing, I promised this in the, when I advertised this particular webinar, and I'm going to talk about this last because I want everybody to remember this. Why folic acid is not helpful? Not only it's not helpful, but it causes significant harm to the unborn, and not only to unborn, to you as an adult as well. The reduced folates which are folate acid and the methylated form of folate, are needed for DNA production, balanced methylation, and support neurological development of the fetus and the baby after it's born through the mother's milk, by the way. Folic acid binds preferentially to folate binding proteins or folate receptors. So if the synthetic one, which by the way, every mother these days is full of it probably, or some are more than others. If they eat conventional food, they're going to have a lot of folic acid. So if they have a lot of folic acid, guess what's going to happen? All those receptor binders, binding proteins and folate receptors, where their regular folate or reduced folate should go into, they're occupied, right? And they're occupied, that's a problem. Also, there's some studies that show, there are lots of studies actually, I just chose 3 of them. This one, it shows the soluble forms of the high affinity binders are present in serum of the breast milk. The binding proteins serve to accumulate and stabilize reduced folate compounds in milk, and they may also facilitate absorption of folate in the intestinal mucosa of the neonates. So that means really that now these, not only the milk is not going to have a lot or almost none of the reduced folate, the real folate that the baby needs and the mother needs, by the way, but now it's going to have less of that, but also it's affecting the intestinal mucosa and how that develops in a baby. That's very, very important. And we know that we have a lot of autism. Autism is on the rise, and it's rising every year. It's going higher and higher and higher. We have kids with cancers. We have kids with terrible gastrointestinal system, and so on. Other published studies that show that unmetabolized folic acid, actually, there's a that's again the synthetic one. It's really a problem there. And this detectable appearance of unmetabolized folic acid in the milk of even unsupplemented mothers. So where's it coming from? It's coming from food. Other 2 problems with the folate for babies. Feeding breast milk lowers natural folate levels by 25%. So never heat that. I'm not sure how that goes, but do not forget that the mother needs folate also to methylate to prevent postpartum depression. This is such a big one. I'm not sure if you ever work with postpartum depression women, but it's my heart really bleeds. This is why I like to work with them before becoming pregnant, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy, because I can tell you, if you work with them, if you know what you're doing, none of them is going to have postpartum depression. None of them. Does not matter if it has an NPHFR or folate cycle problem from birth, a glitch in that particular gene or not. Other one, this is not only for babies and for the unborn, but also for all of us. Folic acid supplementation does not reduce intracellular concentration of homocysteine. High homocysteine, if you don't know, if you never worked with that, never tested that in your clients from yourself, high homocysteine, it brings down the cardiovascular disease and actually it's premature death. And it's not only via cardiovascular disease, but usually it is via anything neurological, anything like dementia and worse, right? Alzheimer's, dementia is linked to high homocysteine and so on. So you never want to have, even for 1 month, high homocysteine level. So if you give somebody, as doctors do, folic acid, the synthetic form, the serum homocysteine level is going to go down, and the doctor is going to say, "Oh, look at that homocysteine; it's so beautiful there. We prevent a cardiovascular disease. We didn't prevent anything because the intracellular concentration of homocysteine is still elevated. It's going to go even higher and higher, and we haven't stopped any dementia, haven't stopped any cardiovascular disease." Also during early embryogenesis, so that means the woman is pregnant already, DNA methylation, which is a chief regulator of gene expression, is epigenetically programmed. So again, really, what else is happening to the mother? It's very important. Any suboptimal methyl donor supply could alter DNA methylation and provide a right explanation for a possible mechanism of contributing to increased birth defects. And I have seen, I'm not specializing in kids, but I do see kids from my clients, and some of my clients send me other clients and their friends and so on with kids. And I've seen for the last 2 years, last year and a half, actually, quite a few babies with quite a few birth defects. And again, not all of them were explicable by the defects in the genome from the parents, because I usually tell them, both of them, to get that genome tested as well. This is exactly what the child might have. The suggestion, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which is from 2015, says it will suggest that high folic acid consumption reduces MTHFR protein activity levels, creating a pseudo MTHFR deficiency and hepatocyte degeneration. So there you go. It's not only that folic acid is depleting, the child, or it's bringing, it makes the mothers actually to bear children that have a lot of genetic mutations and a lot of problems, health problems from birth, but also in all of us can lead to hepatotoxicity. The lipid disturbance and altered membrane integrity arising from changes in phospholipid and lipid metabolism. So this is pretty bad. And I'm going to end with another one, which is the really bad one, again, about folic acid. There's some other, and this is a really good paper. It's The Tale of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde and Mr. Hyde. And it was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition 2018, so only 5 years ago. It's a systemic review or meta-analysis of large randomized clinical trials of folic acid supplementation. So again, it's supplementation with the synthetic form, folic acid. It showed, with no question, an increase in overall cancer incidence associated with folic acid supplementation. The findings, and the author suggests, it's not the one author, there's many authors, suggest that findings suggest patients should not be taking folic acid supplementation while maintaining optimal folate status from natural sources of folate. And with this, I'm gonna open up for questions. Sorry, it took a little bit longer. I knew it's gonna take a little bit longer. I invite you for the workshop that's going to take place in April 6th and 13, I believe.
Actually, it's not. It's going to be May. May.
Right. It's May.
Yeah. We just changed that today.
I knew that. Yeah, I knew actually it's in May. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm like.
That's okay.
I cannot think so further in May. Let's put it like that. So, in May, yes, in May 6th and May 13. And check out the Institute of Holistic Nutrition on the current events in the workshop, or email Colleen to get to that where to find that particular workshop. In the workshop is going to be a lot more about everything what I talked today, but also all the other segments or the pathways, we call them, of the methylation cycle, and a lot more. It's going to be a lot more. Stuff that you can apply in practice. Is going to be more symptomatology. I'm trying to do something that is going to help you more to go by symptomatology, not necessarily by blood testing. If you don't have cooperative doctors that are treating your clients, or their family doctors, because otherwise we are out of luck, right? So I'm going to more with that.
Okay, Sofia, we've got a few questions, and Maria. Yes, it's May 6th and 13. May 6th and 13, 2 Saturdays in a row. Yeah. Okay, Sofia.
Because our in May 29th, April 29th, we have a graduation and so on. So it's like, it's just a moving target.
Yes. So before we go any further, I want to say thank you. And I'm sure all of us want to say thank you. And I see some things happening in the chat with them saying thank you. And that was wonderful. So I really appreciate your time this evening. You did go a little longer, but most of us stuck with you. I think we just lost one person. That's it. But it was excellent.
Thank you, Julia, as well. And I hope I'm going to see a lot of you in the workshop, because this is just a snippet, a small introduction in the whole thing. And I promise one thing, that I'm going to make it digestible, as I said before. I promise that I'm not going to give you all the stuff that you cannot use in your practice. It's just theory, and you're not going to use it at all. I'm just going to occupy at that time for those 2 days practically with practical stuff that you know where to start, you know what to look at, you know, symptoms, you know how to treat yourself as well. Because again, remember, 45% of us have some MTHFR problem, and a lot others may have very serious methylation problems, not because of birth, because of something else that is going on in your life, right? Maybe stress. So many assignments. Martin, that would do it.
Very true. Okay, I'm going to say goodnight and let you go, Sofia. You've been more than kind to be with us this evening. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you. You'll see the recording come out too in the weekly digest.